Hey, friends, welcome to another episode of the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert. Today's guest always has her hands in multiple things. She has unmatched EQ, strategic business acumen, and she's a builder of people, place, and process derived from a multitude of experiences and opportunities. I am so happy to share with you the journey of my friend, Sara Schlipp-Riedel. Sara,
Hi, I'm so
what's
glad to
up?
be here. Thank you for this opportunity. This is just
Oh,
awesome. I've been looking forward
thank
to it.
you. Well, one, I'm pumped that it didn't hose up your name in the
Crushed
introduction,
it.
and
Well done.
so that was good. I tripped up a little bit on a couple of those words, that a lot of P's in there. So, but that's all good. And so can I ask you a quick question on what was why did you choose? Because I think this is a very interesting perspective for anyone that makes this decision. Is why did you choose to hyphenate your name?
Oh, that is such a great question. So I don't come from a long line of aspiring, ambitious, educated people.
Hmm.
There isn't a lot of high achievement and advanced education in my family. And I really, from a very young age, recognized that I wanted to pave a different path. And so part of why I held on to my last name is I wanted to bring pride to it. I wanted to bring pride to Schlipp. I wanted to kind of redefine what that legacy was and be a example for future generations. So that's why I held on to it. Great
All right.
question.
Well, there's the podcast. Great to meet you. And seriously, like you crushed it just
Mic
with that
drop.
one answer. Right. Good answer. So I am super excited to have you on the show because I think you are so multi-talented. It was not a bunch of shit that I was saying at the beginning of like you have unmatched EQ, because when I met you for the first time, so funny. So you and I we were introduced by a mutual friend, David Lyman. And he was like, you got to meet this person. She's a rock star. And I think everybody knows David Lyman. So we were connected, and I think we were emailing back and forth. I don't even think we did a Zoom call at that point. We were in post like the depths of COVID. We were just coming out of the depths of COVID. So I think it was fall, wasn't it, like September
Yes, that's right.
2020?
October.
October. Oh, geez. All right, good. So again, very high EQ. You remember the things that actually matter. So the
I do.
so we're figuring out a spot to meet. We figure out let's go to the Caribou, not the one by Home Depot in the West End. Let's go to the other one that's closed. And
Uh-huh.
then we go to the other Caribou, the one that is by Home Depot. That one's closed. So we literally
Yeah.
just sat and just BS without coffee. I think we didn't even like have anything to drink, and like just sat at a picnic table and just talked. And I'll tell you, like your flexibility and being like just cool about it, and the way you carried yourself and everything like that, I can see why you are successful just in the fact that of how your personality flows. So that was like, I got to get you to be a part of this thing. Like you are way too cool to not have be a part of this thing.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thanks so much. I don't know that I would necessarily call myself cool, but I'm cool like a cucumber cool, right? I don't fluster easy. It's
Yeah,
kind of one of my superpowers, and it has a tendency to be sort of a differentiator, right? When
yeah,
shit's hit the fan,
yeah,
um, it's a differentiator to be a calm force. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. We're gonna dig into all that stuff. One thing I found fascinating. We did our team summit a few weeks ago, and you're from Michigan, and also there's two other of our facilitators, Dick Nash and Laura Cohen, that are also from Michigan. And so we had this whole Michigan, and you're not only just from Michigan, you're not Spartan fans, you're Wolverine fans, and
Ooh, that's
so
great.
there's all this different there was this whole vibe around Michigan, University of Michigan in our team summit that I thought was pretty cool.
It was super cool and just coincidental that the three of us ended up in a group together. I mean, it was going to happen at one point or another, but yeah, that was really fun. And there's just something about encountering people who know where you come from, right?
Yep,
There's
yep.
just something to that. And so, yeah, it was really cool. And I spent time with Dick in the weeks after, and I've, getting time on the calendar with Laura so we can dig
Sweet.
in and
Talk,
continue those
talk, talk Michigan things.
talk Michigan things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go
Uh,
blue.
I also know you grew up in Holland, and Holland is a big area. Grand Rapids / Holland is a big area for the office furniture industry, which I spent about 17 years in. And so I've been to Holland so many times, and it's such an interesting culture there because it's so beautiful. I didn't love it because at the time I think it was fully dry. So there was like one restaurant that maybe served wine, and I think you had to do it in the basement. So due to the hardcore Dutch reform aspect of things there. So what was it like growing up in Holland, Michigan? And what was tell me about your family dynamic and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you hit the nail on the head. I think there's been a lot of progress in that area, in the Holland, Zeeland area. So you'll be glad to know that if you ever have to travel back, there are many places in which you can enjoy a libation. So don't hold us against it. Hold it against us. We've come a long way. But it was an amazing place to grow up. And of course, you don't really appreciate that when you're in the midst of it. And now when I go home and I bring my family there, I'm so proud. I'm proud to say that that is where I come from. It's interesting, it's historically been a fairly conservative place, founded by Dutch settlers many, many years ago. And so that definitely was a thread to my childhood. I was an only child of my parents' marriage. They had both been married before, and my dad had two boys from that relationship. And so I have these half brothers that are 10 and 12 years older. So by the time I had any awareness of what was what, they were in high school. And it's so fun now because my friends here and my spouse in particular just kind of marvel at the fact that I'm so in love with 80s rock bands. But that was like the theme song of my childhood, right? They would just be rocking out in the basement, in their bedrooms, in their, cars out in the garage that they were perpetually working on. So I know all the songs and I absolutely love them. So yeah, so that's just kind of a fun component that really shaped me and maybe makes me a little bit cool.
Yeah, I think that makes you cool.
Rock
Like
band.
yeah, right. So give me hold on a second. Never mind. I have a question for you later that maybe was going to tie back to that. So let's talk about that a little later in the 9 questions.
Okay.
Give me a
Fun.
little insight into that. How old were your parents when they had you?
Mid 30s.
Mid 30s. Okay, so not too late, but
Not too
still.
late. My dad was closer to 40. Yeah.
Okay. Which is like more
Yeah.
normal now in 2023
That's
for
right. That's
for
right. But
people,
at the
right? Like I
time,
think, yeah, that's a
yeah,
that was a big deal then.
I think my mom will tell you stories of how numerous people would say things to her like, "Oh, well, I'm just so sorry that you didn't have the opportunity to have a child."
Mm,
Right. And she
mm,
was young 30s or when her first marriage didn't work out. They just,
mm.
many in that, that time, that era, believed, that song was sung. And
Yeah.
so, yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, way to flip the script on that.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Well, that just kind of sets the tone for all that came next, right?
it kind of does, yeah. Were your stepbrothers, so being 10, 12 years older than you, were your stepbrothers highly protective of you, or were they a little harder on you because of that age gap and just the whole dynamic?
I think probably a little bit of both, for sure. They loved having this like cute little kid to attract girls to come and hang out. Their friends were oftentimes my babysitters, and that sometimes worked out for them, right? So they kind of played that to their advantage.
Oh my God.
uh, but I think the whole family just kind of delighted in my presence. My mom will tell you she cannot recall a point where I say threw a temper tantrum. I just always had this really easy, go lucky, adaptable demeanor. And I think they just kind of delighted in it. I just brought
Did
joy
you,
and sunshine, and yeah.
did you mature? Did you think that because of being in that environment, right? So you think about young Sarah, and you've got these guys that are both older than you, and then you've got your dad who's almost 40 and or is probably 40 at the time. So, let's put you right around 5 years old or so, right? And did you find yourself like kind of expediting the maturity aspect of things just because you were around older people all the time?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I credit that a lot for my ability to spend time with people of all, walks of life, ages, generation. Um, and what was really interesting is I sort of represented an in-between generation in my family. Like there's not another person on my mom or my dad's side that is sort of the era in which I was born and represent. And so really the way for me to engage and to participate was always to kind of level up in terms of my ability to hold conversation. I spent a lot of time with the adults or the older kids, right?
Mm,
Most of my cousins were my brother's age, or there were those that came, gosh, like 8 to 10 years later. So I kind of
mhm.
represented this in between generation. So if I wanted to participate or be engaged, I had to kind of sit at the big kid table from a pretty early age. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you find that you were, so in essence you were an only child but you were the youngest child, and so right, so do you see where I'm going with that? So in some aspects, if you think about just how society treats and general parenting treats an only child, it's different than if it's the last child, because then the last child is like they can get away with highway robbery, right? So where were you in that mix of things? Did you get away with everything, and you were just kind of left alone because they already had two boys that were probably where they were pulling their hair out over because they were hell on wheels, or were you like treated like the only child?
Oh, you hit the nail on the head. The boys really gave them a run for their money. And so by the time I came around, and I was an observer to that, right? I think the other thing I would especially note as being a part of me from as early an age as I can remember, I just was really attentive. I was an ardent observer of human behavior. And so I definitely took cues of what to do and what to not to do. I paid a lot of attention. And I have practiced that similarly when it comes to shaping my leadership practice and perspective, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Just such an ardent observer. And so I knew what I could and couldn't get away with. And from my dad's perspective in particular, I really couldn't do I could do no wrong.
Yeah,
But
right.
the boys had already put them through their paces. And as I mentioned, they were older anyway. And so I think even when I think about, my perspective as a parent now being, at it for about 12 years here, the parent I was when I first started, if I had a child today, my perspective would be so different. My
Mm-hmm,
approach would be
mm-hmm.
so different. So I definitely benefited from that. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that I, had more space to to be free. And I had fun. I
Very
had
good.
fun. But one thing my parents always practice that I really appreciate as well, and I think, it behooves us all to kind of understand what our approach is related to trust. My parents started from a place of trust. It was mine to lose. And I knew that, I recognized that, and I really tried to honor it, right? I never had a curfew. I never had a curfew growing up, but I knew that my parents would not go to bed until I got home. I knew
Mm-hmm.
that they would stay awake, or even if they fell asleep, they'd wake back up. And I wanted to be respectful of that. So I never came home like at 3 o'clock in the morning, though I could have, and there wouldn't have been repercussion for it um, necessarily. But I was mindful of the fact that they started from that place of trust, and it was mine to lose. And then, there are people who take a different approach,
Right, right.
and that works for them too. But yeah, yeah.
Um, so in high school, I want to go two directions. One is extracurricular activities, things you kind of were into, but I gotta believe you just seem like you meet somebody and you just know that they were just a damn good student. Like they got good grades. They didn't screw around. They weren't me. Like that is like, you were one of the smart kids. Am I close?
Yeah, I definitely have always been pretty disciplined. Um, I'm very organized. I enjoy a sense of accomplishment or achievement, but I also had a lot of fun. And I think that made me a little bit of a unicorn, right? Like I think people kind of resented me a little bit, like, or just assumed that you had to fall in one category or the other, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, but I did
Yeah.
I did work hard because again, I recognized that I wanted for me, I think about, I don't ever want to preclude myself from opportunity, right? Like, don't make a decision or engage in behavior that precludes you an option,
Right.
a path,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and I saw some of that growing up, and I just wanted to make sure that the world was my oyster.
Yeah. So a
So
very wise of you, wise beyond your years at that point, because I don't think a lot of people, well, in I will even say kind of quote unquote our generation of students, I definitely was not that. I was not thinking about I was not thinking about what the future held for me. I was thinking about some other things. And so like I was a
well, it
little bit
worked
of a,
out for you.
it does. It actually does always work out, right?
It
I
does.
do say
Yeah.
that to people that have kids that are a little bit of goofballs, or they don't know their way yet or anything like that. And I was like, hey, don't worry about it. I was there too, and kids figure it out. Kids are smart.
They do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. What were your what kind of extracurricular things that you did in high school kept you busy?
Yeah. So I love to sing. I always have. I think part of it was like a coping, right? I would
Mm,
just kind of, like, from an early age, just turn on the music and sing. And I think I recognized too early on that songs are stories.
mm,
Songs are stories. And I think we kind of collectively understand that, but I really connected to that idea.
mm.
And so I would allow myself to kind of get lost in the song, in the music. So I was in choir. I participated in, the musicals every year. I just love that. And, there was a time where I thought maybe I would have a career, like a career as a vocalist of some
Mm.
kind. Um, it didn't pan out that way, but I've continued to sing and I really love it. The other thing that I participated in, I think, which is really consistent with how you know me, is cross country,
Mm.
the sort of endurance approach to
Hmm.
to running. And my friends love to give me a hard time. It was sort of like, and maybe it was just a coincidence, but there were a lot of like only children who
Mm.
participated in cross country. So it was kind of like you're on the team, but you're really an individual contributor,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. There's some undertones to that, right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. So I love that. I always loved running. Just recently I had to give it up. My knees are shot. I went hard for a long time, but yeah, running was a big part of, and it's the endurance piece. It's the processing thought, in motion, processing thought in motion. So yeah.
Did you ever find yourself singing and running at the
Ooh.
same time?
Okay, so true story. I had watched like a documentary in high school, and I think it was like featuring Britney Spears and Christina Aguilera, who were just like having their heyday when I was in high
Yeah,
school.
right. Right.
And it showed them basically preparing to go on tour by singing their songs while running on the treadmill, because it would help them build like lung capacity
Right. Yeah.
and endurance to be able to perform and sing well. And so I definitely did that. I
Good.
definitely did that
All
for a
right,
time. And
good.
then I was like, this is stupid. I'm going to pass out. I don't know how to do
Right,
it.
yeah. I don't need to build my lung capacity that much.
I'm not going on tour. I'm not going
Yeah,
on
yeah,
tour next month.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Where did you choose to go to college?
Yeah. So that's a fun story. So that decision is what brought me to the Twin Cities. Minnesota as a state, Minneapolis as a city, not on my radar whatsoever.
Hmm.
Holland happens to be about 2 hours north of Chicago. And so I spent a lot of time there. I dated a guy that lived there for a couple of years. So I would travel back and forth. My girlfriends and I would spend weekends there. That's where I imagined I would end up. I was very indecisive when it came to freshman year of college. So I ended up going somewhere pretty close to home. And just didn't have a great experience. It wasn't different enough. It felt more of the same, like high school, a continuation of high school. A lot of folks who I went to high school with also went to that school. And I remember I had a conversation with a professor who worked at a different institution, a different college that was close to, again, Holland. And they just asked me at some point during that my freshman year at the midpoint, how's it going? And I had to be honest and say that I wasn't having a good experience. I wasn't performing academically. I just kind of lost myself. And they said, would you be open to me making some recommendations for schools that you might consider transferring to? I said, sure, I'd be open to that. And so they recommended, of course, a few institutions in Chicago. That would have been a natural fit. But then they also recommended a couple of places here in the Twin Cities. And so I flew out and I visited Augsburg, where I ended up. I visited St. Thomas, and I visited, what's the other one? McAllister. I visited those.
All good schools.
All great schools, all great schools.
Yeah.
And what really attracted me to Augsburg at the time was they were really on the front end of this conversation around diversity, inclusion, and belonging. And this is 20 years ago, they were talking about it, prioritizing it institutionally. And it was sort of like they had to proclaim it so that it could become. Because, of course, when I came then that following fall, the diversity representation, from a percentage perspective was pretty small, right? But, if you were to walk on campus today, you'd be completely blown away. So it was sort of an aspirational mission. And so it was really cool to go and be a part of that. And I would say just getting to an urban environment in general was completely life-changing, life-changing. I felt like for the first time, I really belonged. I understood in a way that I hadn't to that point my perspective on the world and life. And I was suddenly being equipped with the vocabulary to articulate it. And so it was just a really cool, life-changing moment of impact coming to the Twin Cities. Yeah.
And what direction did you choose to go what major did you declare?
Oh yeah. I chose communications. And not because, you hear sometimes like communications ends up being the default for somebody who's indecisive or maybe went somewhere to play football, right? It kind of ends up being this like default degree that is applicable, but can be pretty vague. But for me, it just resonated. I was right at home. And communications, the program itself really emphasizes, interpersonal communication, global communication, essentially how are we being intentional about how we're expressing ourselves, right? It matters a lot, and recognizing that each of our forms of communication and our needs related to communication are so impacted by our life's experiences or lack thereof. So that was really cool. My specific emphasis within the major was public speaking and television broadcasting. I really believed for a time when I came to the Twin Cities that I wanted to go into television broadcasting. I wanted to be a reporter. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to go where others were maybe afraid to. And so that was the path that I pursued for a little while. And that was really fun. Yeah.
You just recently, within the last couple of years, went to do some graduate studies. So, but you didn't go right after your undergrad, did you? You got right into getting a job and right into the workforce.
That's right. Yeah. Well, and that's really significantly influenced by the fact that I put myself through college, to know me is to know that I have never had just one job. Like from the moment that it was appropriate for me to have a job, I had one because I love to work. Um, I always say it's like my farmer blood. I come from farmers on my dad's side, and I just love to work. And so I've done a whole lot of that, but I worked multiple jobs in college to put myself through. And
Sweet.
so I really had to grind that out
Yeah.
and then, pay for it for a little while after completing. So it was really necessary for me to get out into the workforce and start to kind of build that pool back up to be able then to, and then, I had some babies
Yeah.
and was raising family. And so, yeah, so then it did come, it came later.
What was your, we're going to take a break here in a second, but what was your favorite job that you had while you were in college?
Ooh, I had this really cool opportunity while in school. And then even thereafter, I got to work and serve and spend time at what's called the Augsburg House. It's a home that's owned by the institution, and it's where the president of the college and his family or her family live while they're in office. And I built a relationship with that family at that time, and they felt comfortable bringing me into the home to be a special assistant, to support and to serve them in their uniqueness. And that home, the expectation while living there is that home is used for the purposes of advancing the institution's mission. So that means hosting lots of events, sometimes hosting dignitaries, people who come from across the globe to participate in college and university events. And so I had that opportunity while in school, right? As like a 19, 20-year-old. And that was just really cool. I mean, experiences, I think, unlike a lot of my peers. So that was definitely the coolest job
Yeah,
that
that
I
sounds
had.
cool. I mean, what a good experience and exposure to things. I mean, like there's obviously you're getting paid to do it, but yeah, like there's that aspect that it could probably help some things out while you're paying for college yourself. But still, just the things that you were able to see, it just seems like it was the stars were aligned for that one.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
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 Yeah. All right. Well, we love our community supporters, and so we want to hear from a few of them now because they're a big part. Besides our members, they're a big part of what makes this podcast and our community possible. So let's take a quick break, listen to a few of our community supporters, and we're going to be right back with Sarah. If you're an entrepreneur or married to one, your journey is complex. You want financial advice that impacts your whole net worth, including your business, not just stock market investments. You also want a partner that quarterbacks the relationships between the CPA, estate planner, banker, and other trusted advisors. That's where the team at eWealth Partners comes in. We love helping you and your spouse design a financial plan that aligns and empowers you. A plan that addresses your concerns, priorities, and goals tailored to reach your long-term vision. A long-term vision that is worth the pursuit today. Visit ewealthpartners.com to learn how they can help couples like you. eWealth Partners, holistic financial planning for entrepreneurs. Investment advisor services offered through AdvisorNet Wealth Management. eWealth Partners and AdvisorNet Wealth Management are not affiliated. If you're anything like me, you know enough to be dangerous when it comes to finance, yet need some help when things get complicated. All-in-One Accounting provides the right financial expertise and leadership to align with your stage of growth. From outsourced accounting and bookkeeping to strategic financial planning, the team of accounting rockstars at All-in-One Accounting are passionate about positively impacting the businesses and lives of their clients. You need to check them out at allinoneaccounting.com. All-in-One Accounting, taking our clients from financial chaos to business clarity and beyond. United Healthcare is dedicated to helping people live healthier lives and making the health system work better for everyone by simplifying the healthcare experience, meeting consumer health and wellness needs, and sustaining trusted relationships with care providers. UHC is continually focused on building a modern, high-performing health system via improved access, affordability, outcomes, and experiences. With a network of over 1.6 million physicians and healthcare professionals in over 6,000 hospitals, United Healthcare is dedicated to connecting employers and their employees to better health by offering quality benefits designed for affordability. For more information, visit United Healthcare at www.uhc.com. United Healthcare, helping people live healthier lives. Verseek Search and Consulting is thrilled to support Coalition9 and this podcast, and we are just as excited to have them as a partner. Verseek is a Minnesota-based, high-performance recruiting firm that specializes in interim solutions, direct hire, and executive leadership search. Their team of experienced professionals and seasoned leaders across various areas of expertise and industries have been in your shoes. They quickly assess your whole company and identify key elements that will take your business to the next level. Your company's success hinges on the capacity of your people, and few areas of your business are more critical than your finance and accounting team. Your company's success hinges on the capacity of your people. Verseek can help connect you with the talented candidates within finance and accounting, along with other areas of expertise in executive search, direct hire, and interim solutions. People are the ultimate business advantage. Find your people together with Verseek and make the best possible for your business. Learn more and contact Verseek by visiting verseek.com and following them on LinkedIn. When you think of a typical CPA firm, you probably think of tax planning. Well, that just scratches the surface of what Boulay offers their clients. By providing smart, in-depth thinking from experts in accounting, audit, tax, and business consulting, they know what it takes to achieve financial success. Whether it's protecting your business, building your wealth, or securing your future, you can count on Boulay to go beyond addressing just financial matters and providing you with tailor-made, workable solutions. Learn about all they have to offer at bouleygroup.com. Boulay, helping you get there. All right, we're back with Sara, and we just talked about some of the college stuff. So I don't think I've ever really got into this with you, nor did would I ever have a reason to. So did you go from college to a job and then start your career out and then have babies, or did you just go right into having babies?
No, I went straight to my career.
Right.
I spent some time in the workforce. I think it was, 3 to 5 years. It's so interesting, right? Because I have always worked. It just kind of felt like a continuum, right? Like, yes, I completed my degree and that happened. And then I just carried on with what I was already underway. And so the decision to start a family came, late 20s. Late 20s. I knew that I wanted to get after it early. I wanted to be a younger parent. That was just what was right for me, probably because I wanted to kind of shift the paradigm a little bit. My parents had been older and there was some real merit in that for sure. But I wanted a different experience for myself and for my kids. And so, I don't know if you want me to go down that road.
Yeah, we don't have to go into all the baby stuff. We don't have to get into details of that. But what I do, so there was a 3 to 5 year period where you were doing something. What did you start your career out in, and what was your what was your first real? I'm using air quotes, real job out of college?
Yeah. Well, my first real job, it was interesting. So I completed my undergrad in 2006. And it was this interesting in between with 2006 and then 2008, right? That those were some tough years in terms of starting your career, right? To be going out and just starting out in that particular time. The economy wasn't great. There maybe wasn't a ton of opportunity. And I recognized pretty early on that what I wanted to do, I had, not surprisingly, I had to work toward, right? I had to put in some time. I had to hustle. I had to grind it out. I had to pay my dues, right? So my first job, my first real, legit big kid job, I started working at Thrivent, actually. I worked at Thrivent. I was really only there for a short time. I was brought in, and in this moment, I'm recognizing this pattern. I was brought in to support a woman who had been a career professional at Thrivent. And she had at some point decided that she was going to forego motherhood, and then got, I think, to her mid 40s. And she and both her spouse had had very successful careers to that point. And as they were maybe rounding the corner and kind of planning for what that next chapter would look like, they realized that they in fact wanted to have a family. And they made this kind of radical decision that they were going to adopt 2 children from Europe, somewhere in Europe. And so she was, as I mentioned, a career professional, and Thrivent was very embedded. And so they brought me in to really support her exit, to be a partner to her, to document, to wind things down and ensure that that was a really smooth transition. And we did that. We did that successfully. And she was able to kind of launch into this next chapter of her life. And then from there, I ended up supporting two other women who were in pretty senior leadership capacities, more in an administrative function.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was a really cool experience. And then shortly after that, I wasn't there for that long, did a lot of really cool work. But then my alma mater came a calling, and they were rebuilding a department, a functional area on campus. And they really wanted me to help in the architecting of that. So I went back to Augsburg. I didn't imagine I would ever do that. I always wanted to remain deeply connected, but I didn't imagine I would have a professional career there necessarily. And then, of course, I ended up being there for like 10 years in a
Yeah.
variety of capacities. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
The big thing I like to talk about in the on the podcast is I kind of got a vibe on the nature versus nurture, because you've talked about a lot of different topics of like how you've been shaped, especially around the environment that you were brought up in and things like that. So I think there's a nice balance of nature versus nurture, but also I think that paradigm shifting events of like how you want to approach life, or like a leadership, or some people, it's hardcore entrepreneurship where, I think you're going a little bit more the direction of like leadership, but then almost like leadership. But you had a massive life shifting event when you were pregnant with, was it your first child?
Second.
Second child. So is Charlotte. All right.
That's
So this is a big deal. And so this is a big part of that. When you and I have talked in the past and just recently talked, is like you're now more comfortable with this message and sharing this message in public. So I'm going to go there. So talk about it. Like it was huge, and it was your paradigm shifting event. And this is bigger than what most people probably deal with. So if you could dig into that a little bit for me, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely, to know me is to know. I often will ask people to kind of complete that statement. To know me is to know. And to know me is to know that in 2013, December 2013, well, I guess it would have been a few weeks before, but my father at the age of 66 was diagnosed with stage 4 lymphoma. He
Mm,
probably had been ill for a long time, but he was definitely the silent suffer kind of type. He didn't want to burden
mm,
anyone ever. And so I think he probably was ill and uncomfortable for a long time. But so stage 4 lymphoma diagnosis, at that point, there's not a whole lot they can do for you. I mean, it was everywhere. It was
mm,
everywhere.
mm,
And so it was 3 weeks from diagnosed to death.
mm,
So early December 2013, we lost him.
mm,
Um, it was a gift to us. He was very coherent to the very end. So he helped inform the decisions about, when we brought in hospice, whether or not it made sense to even pursue any form of treatment.
mhm,
Um, and even, in the moments before he went to kind of a more incoherent state, he was providing us the reassurances that this was the right thing and that he was okay and that there was a peace.
mm.
And that was a gift. That was certainly a
Yeah,
gift.
for sure.
There's a story that I'm going to keep it together to share because I think it matters a lot. And it has definitely shaped me and continues to shape me. There was a moment, my two half brothers, who we've talked about, and I were in his hospital room. And my mom, so tired, distressed, she said, I'm just going to take a minute. I'm going to run to the cafeteria and get a cup of coffee.
Mm,
So she gets up and she leaves, and the three of us are sitting there, and it's pretty quiet. We're in the ICU. So it's not a rowdy crowd, right?
yeah, right.
And it's quiet for a few minutes. And my dad just says, look at me. Look at me and listen when I tell you that you cannot take it with you.
Mm,
You can't take any of it with you. All I have in this moment is the love I feel for you and the love you've given to me. And that was really the last proclamation that he made with the little bit of time that we had there at the end. Hugely impactful. And I come back to that and I tell that story because here was a man literally in the final day of his coherent existence. And he's reminding us that you can't take any of it with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
That it's really just about the love you give and the love you receive, right? So that happens. He passes, he leaves us and leaves this really lovely legacy. And 3 weeks later, 32 weeks pregnant with my daughter, I suffer a ruptured appendix. And let me just say, appendicitis while pregnant isn't terribly uncommon. You know, things get a little shifted and squished, right? And if you can catch it before the rupture itself, it can be a pretty minor procedure, right? There's a bit of a recovery and you've got to be careful. But again, it's not terribly uncommon. And it just so happened that it got missed. It got missed and it ruptured. And this internal infection just really took over my body. Charlotte was born, you know, swiftly, and that there was a whole NICU existence, which is a grind. And I have such a special place in my heart for, you know, anyone who has or is currently having to kind of grind that NICU life. It's unique. And if you've got people in your life who are doing it, show up and support them, because it's unlike another experience you'll probably encounter. So here I was, you know, still mourning the loss of my dad, and my life is at stake, right? And the interesting thing that I learned through this experience is that internal infection is really determined. It's really determined. It wants to thrive. It wants to survive. And so it will hole itself up in your body and just try to manifest and make its way. And so for the preceding 6 months, really the first half of 2014, and maybe even a little bit beyond 2014, just in general, was this constant battle of supporting Charlotte so that she could thrive, right? And fighting for my own life. And there was more than one instance where a social worker, as part of our hospital care team, would come to us and say, "Are your affairs in order? Are your wishes known?" Because the prognosis isn't great, right? And so that's a very humbling experience. And so, you know, that's that story in a nutshell. And of course, there are bits and pieces to it. We lovingly now refer to it as the Riddell family horror story.
Right.
Because it was hard and it was horrible. But,
Yeah.
you know, we came out the other side, and we had been so supported by an extraordinary community of friends and family and colleagues who just really showed up for us again and again and again in that space. And we came out the other side and we were better for it, right? We were better for it. And fortunately for me, I have a partner that when rubber meets the road and things get tough, we come together rather than being, you know, kind of pulled apart. So I'm happy to share.
Yeah, that is right. Like the first time in this podcast, I had a hard time keeping it together. And so I've never heard you go into such detail about that story. You and I breezed over it when we met each other, just about, you know, just in my normal style, like just trying to get to know people. But boy, like, that's, I do say all the time, like, people are shaped by experiences. And I even said that about, like, in the opening, you've always got your hands in multiple things, and you've always, you know, but I think one of the things that you bring is so much perspective. And it's that life experience, and it's that the words that your dad said to you matched with the experience that you lived in such a short period of time, that is going to be just like, I'm not even going to talk about it. Paradigm shifting event. The word shifting is not even the word that it should even come close to touching that. That's like flipping it on its end and then pushing it down a cliff. Like that is complete madness. And for, that is just a huge testament to your physical / mental resilience. So I'm gonna let that just set right there for a little bit, and then we're just gonna move into the businessy side of things. And I do want to talk about your family, because I met Charlotte when you came out to the farm, and she's lovely, and so
That's
like
right.
just a little extension of you. So let's start right.
Yes.
So the business side of things, then, as we move forward, you really got kind of double down on the whole leadership side of things. And what I love about it is you're designing a life that is matched for the life that you in a career, let's say, whatever, and that matches with the life you want to live. And
Mhm.
so now you can kind of do anything that you want, and you're making it all work, which is so cool. And the skills and personality and experiences that you bring, because you've touched so many different things, to the people you work with, we're so gifted to be able to have you on the Coalition 9 team. So that's, I'm not gonna understate that either. But the work that you're doing with Leora, talk a little bit about the work that you do there. You just recently you did your graduate studies through Gonzaga on organizational leadership, which I knew about because that's when I met you, and you needed to wrap that up before you joined us. So all that stuff.
Right.
So I just talked way too much. Talk about the work that you're doing with Leora, and why did you name it that?
Yeah. Yeah. Great question. I was hoping you would ask. So Leora, it beautifully connects back to Charlotte. So um, my spouse is Jewish. He was raised in a Jewish family, and as is tradition, oftentimes individuals who are part of that faith and that community, they will often have sort of their English name, and they will have a Hebrew name.
Mm-hmm.
A Hebrew name. And there are some names that translate beautifully into Hebrew. So, for example, Aiden translates into Eden, which means the beginning. And so, how perfect did that work out? Because he was our first, right?
Mm.
Charlotte doesn't translate into Hebrew. And so, we at the time of her birth worked with someone to determine what would be a good Hebrew name for her. And it gets documented and referenced regularly around the more significant ceremonial events. And so Leora in Hebrew means the light, to
Mm.
bring the light. And it's so befitting her. And it also sort of harkens to my dad, whose name was Leonard.
Oh,
So Leora, right?
Sarah,
Oh,
give me a break here.
I know. It's
What?
so perfect. And huge kudos to the person who we worked with to make that determination. I mean, it just couldn't be more perfect. And so in 2021, when I started my graduate studies, that was motivated significantly by coming out of 2020 and experiencing the world just in complete unrest.
Hmm.
And I remember I turned to Aaron, my spouse, and I said to him at the end of 2020, the future needs a different kind of leader. And I want to be ready. It is time for me to start my graduate program. And he said, I couldn't agree more. Let's get it. And so I applied like the next day, and I started like 3 days later. That's when the next semester was starting. So I was in it. So after doing my graduate studies, almost exclusively for a couple of months, I started to get a little bored because, like I said, I need to have a lot going on. And I got pinged by a few friends and former colleagues who were starting this process of integrating back to the office. And they wanted a little help bringing the group back together. And many of those teams had new members who they had brought on during the pandemic. And so they were going to be sharing a workspace, meeting each other in person for the first time. And there were some groups who very wisely wanted to do that really intentionally. And so I had this opportunity summer 2021 to support some of that work, some of that reintegration, some of that assimilation. And I realized, I got to kind of legitimize this a little bit, right? I don't think I'm going to stop getting asked to serve in this way. And so I thought I got to launch an LLC and God, Leora Leadership
Yeah.
just fits. It just is so befitting. And so, Leora Leadership is really about bringing light and illuminating what is good and right with people. That's really my endeavor. And so that's where the name comes from. And, it's early 2023 and Leora is still in full swing, figuring it out from a business perspective as I go. But, the work itself is really around several things, right? Culture building, talent management, change management practices. I love coming alongside leaders, especially executive leaders, because I know that it's lonely. It's
Yeah.
lonely at the time.
Yeah.
And to have a strategic thought partner can be a total game changer. And my endeavor is always to leave it better than I found it. That's my purpose statement. I want to leave it better than I found it. And that counts for everything, right? When I encounter you at the grocery store, I want you to feel better for having met me than you did, just the moments before
Yeah.
our paths crossed, right? I talk to my kids a lot about, let's leave the hotel room better than we found it if we can help it, right? So it translates into all things. So that's really my purpose statement with Leora is to illuminate and shed light and to leave it better than I found it. So.
And you carry yourself in everything that you do in that respect. I think you have sometimes said like you make a great chief of staff. I never even knew what that meant. Like I hear that, I always think about the president of the United States and what
I
that
know.
means, right? Like, and I think it's different in business, and I think if there's leaders that are in small mid-sized business that can utilize the skills that you bring and just make them a better leader or more thoughtful, or just help them keep their shit together, or whatever that all is, whatever you can evolve that into whatever you want it to be. But to have someone with such high level of EQ, and then also to be able to bring some of that thoughtfulness to leadership as kind of their wing person,
Mhm.
right? Like the Goose to Maverick or whatever, right? Don't think about
Yeah.
don't think about the end, right? Just think about the
Right.
beginning, the
Yeah.
fun parts.
That's right. That's right.
Right. And so, but I think that's a huge part of what you can do with this. And I see it in the work that you do with our leaders because of the way that they're evolving, and you just even working with a group of 9 people, seeing them evolve has been because of the way you carry yourself and your thoughtfulness. It's impactful. So there's another case in point of how that works, which is huge. I mean, to be able to live that, saying it on a podcast is one thing, but then to have like multiple examples of how it actually works and it's been proven out is a testament to your dedication.
Mm-hmm. Well, I appreciate that so much. And, my aspiration, especially here in the Coalition9 community, is to create safe space, right? This is a community in which we prioritize belonging, right? You can be yourself here, your whole self. It's not just about the dollars and cents of revenue. It's about, who you are when you're at home, and recognizing that that has impact and influence to who you are as a business owner and a business leader, and really seeking to support that holistic human is really where it's at. And so just insisting on that belonging and bringing your whole self, the more that we can encourage that, the more that people are going to get out of themselves,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
let's encourage and send that message of your greatest asset, your greatest opportunity is to be more of who you already are.
Yeah.
So let's connect to that. Let's really understand that, and, continue to foster and celebrate those best parts of you. Right. But,
Uh,
you know,
and I need to snip that and make that a commercial, first of all, for Coalition, because you said it
I
way
can
better
come
than
back. I
you
can
said
come
it
back.
way better than I could. And so that's amazing. And then I think too, just the way that you explain that, not even in the Coalition 9 respect, but of like how you work with leaders, because I think so many leaders are challenged from the ability to get vulnerable and be real in front of their people. I think you could have just knowing you could have such a profound effect on the way that they lead. And I can just, and anybody's listening to this, if they're not picking up on that, then they got to re-listen to it, because it is abundantly clear in just the way that you carry yourself, that's the impact that you can have.
Well, I appreciate that. And you referenced the chief of staff function, which I have just fallen in love with.
Mm.
And I think chief of staff is kind of having a heyday
Yeah.
now, right? And part of it is motivated by this very entrepreneurial kind of tech world that we're living in and that is evolving. Chief of staff, as I understand it, as I approach it, as I practice it, is motivated by being this authentic extension of whichever leader I'm working most closely with, but really serving to elevate all of the leaders that are surrounding that person. And look, leaders, they're not superhuman, right? They have their immense capabilities and competencies and capacities, and they're still human, right? And so the opportunity for a chief of staff, someone like myself, is to serve as that interpreter, serve as that mediator, that moderator, right? To make sure that those who are most dependent on that key leader are getting what they need to be successful. And sometimes that's just bridging the gap between perspective and assumption and belief and motivation, right? We oftentimes will make assumptions about what's motivating another person or why it is they're responding the way that they are. And I think one of the things that I do a really great job of is encouraging curiosity, right? Before you respond based on your assumptions, what questions can you ask? How can you be curious to make sure that you're responding from a place of knowing? And that is a game changer. It's a total game changer.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to be successful. Everybody wants to make meaningful contribution. Sometimes you just have to approach them in a way that's as unique as they are to get the most out of them, to get the best out of them. So
yeah. Sara, man, I could just talk to you forever. And we haven't even done 9 questions yet. I want to be respectful of your time.
All right, let's crush it. Let's crush it.
We're going to take a quick break. One shout out I want to give. I always talk about family, so let's just breeze right over this because we've talked about it multiple times. You have a husband with an amazing name, Aaron. You have a son, Aiden, and a daughter, Charlotte, and we've heard about them, but I will not go to the next stage in this podcast unless we give them a shout out, because they are a big part of your life. So obviously, anything you want to say real quick about them?
I think I'm so lucky. We are such a tight unit, and Aaron and I are really trying to model supporting each other, championing each other. And I say to my kids all the time, this relationship, the two of you, this is the most important relationship of your life, right? And I have to give them huge kudos. All 3 of them, they have been nothing but supportive and celebrating of what there's an intensity to me. There's an intensity to me. And we talk about that as a family, and they just couldn't be more supportive and loving. And I feel safe. I feel safe with my family. And I know that doesn't exist everywhere. And so I'm grateful. I'm really grateful. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. We're going to transition to 9 questions. Let's take a quick break. We're going to hear from a few more of our community supporters, and then we're going to dig right in. Every year brings new challenges for Minnesota business leaders, and USI Insurance is here to take the pressure off of the employee benefits decision. Having a local presence with national resources, USI combines a client-centric culture with leading-edge technical resources so you can make an informed decision on your benefits investment. The USI team has been deeply committed to investing into our local communities and utilizes their expertise to provide solutions you can count on to protect your greatest asset, your employees. USI has been partnering with Twin Cities businesses for decades, and they would welcome the opportunity to do the same for you. Visit USI.com to learn how USI's approach to risk management and employee benefits delivers customized, actionable solutions with bottom-line impact. All right, everybody needs a bank. Not just any bank, a good community bank. From personal needs like checking and savings accounts to business services like financing and M&A support, the team at Flagship Bank is there to provide you with the assistance you need so you can spend less time thinking about your finances and more time enjoying what your money can do for you. To learn more, head over to Flagship Banks, that's flagshipbanks with an S.com. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender. Flagship Bank, investing in you. Regardless if you're a startup just figuring things out or a medium-sized organization with a full team, having a legal partner by your side is crucial. Seiler Law is fiercely loyal to their clients and are passionate about removing headaches and roadblocks that can pop up during the growth of your business. Whether you need general outside counsel, are planning a business transaction, or even need someone to guide you through the estate planning process, the team at Seiler Law are the advocates for you. Visit seilerlaw.com to learn more. Seiler Law, where experience meets pragmatism. For more than 20 years, Kaisa has been the trusted financial advisor for women, business owners, executives, and high net worth families, developing financial plans designed to meet them where they are and propel them to where they want to be. Their mission is to remove the worry and stress associated with financial planning and replace it with clarity and confidence. The Kaisa team takes the time to understand each client's unique situation, from financial concerns to the visions that they have for current and future generations, in order to create a truly customized plan. Through consistent communication and personal attentiveness, Kaisa is fiercely devoted to personal well-being and financial prosperity. Get to know the Kaisa team and how they can serve you at kaisawealth.com. The topic of talent is hot in organizations of any size, and I would argue none more than small to mid-sized businesses. That's why it's crucial to have a partner to help you navigate all the HR idiosyncrasies so you can focus on working on your business and not in it. Insperity is a full-service HR partner with a high-touch, high-tech platform helping owners work through challenges like employee retention, company culture, and benefits, just to name a few. Do yourself a favor and explore all they have to offer at insperity.com. Insperity, HR that makes a difference. In addition to the community supporters you heard from on the show today, I also want to give a quick shout out to our evolving level community supporters, Carlson Partners, Fluid Interiors, Keystone Group International, Modern Foundation, and Rev Advisory Group. All right, we're back with Sara, and we are about to do 9 questions. Sara, can you confirm to me you have no idea what I'm about to ask you?
I have no idea.
Okay, good.
I'm sweating.
Good. All right. That's typically how I start every podcast. It's very sweaty. Now I'm less sweaty because we're in talking about it stuff. And now my favorite part, God, I'm so happy about this question. And you teed it up so good about a half an hour ago. Name one song that when it comes on the radio, you have to sing out loud, regardless of who you're with or anything like that. You just got to sing out loud.
Oh my God. There are so many, Aaron. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Gosh. Bon Jovi, Living on a Prayer.
All right. That's a good one. I figured. So that's where I was going to go, is like, so you said 80s rock bands, and
well, that's not quite 80s rock band, but.
Well, it is actually. I think that's hair metal, right? Isn't it? That's a hair band.
Okay. All right. We're going to give him that credit.
I think so.
Go with it. Okay. Okay.
You remember Bon Jovi when he had, well, maybe you don't, I don't know. I'm older than you.
It was kind of like a fancy mullet a little bit.
Hell no.
Great hair. Look, no issues with it.
No, when they launched Slippery When Wet, his hair was huge. And you need to Google that as soon as anybody who's listening to this, you need to Google that shit, because it looks very different than what it did even then when, yes, it was huge. So
huge hair.
Yeah. I'm product of the 90s.
Let's not bring that back.
Yeah. Let's not bring that back. I don't have a choice. Have you ever had a nickname?
I have. Not very many. Sara doesn't translate well to nickname. There are 2 that stand out to me. My dad called me Tiny. God, what I wouldn't pay to hear him say that one more time, right? Yep. And in high school, I was called Schlippy.
Schlippy. I like that one.
Schlippy. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a good one. Yeah, I had all sorts of nicknames with my last name. So Schlippy is probably what I would take rather than anything to do with the word egg. All right. What was your favorite cartoon or TV show as a child?
I love Tom and Jerry. That was a favorite for sure. I would wake up earlier than I needed to on weekdays and watch it. I don't know why it was on, but it would be on at like 5:30 in the morning.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, Tom and Jerry.
Get you ready for school. That was, yeah, those morning cartoons were, you got to have those while you're eating your cereal.
Right.
Would you rather have X-ray vision or magnified hearing?
X-ray vision.
Really?
Can I turn it off?
No, sorry.
Oh, shoot. Gosh.
That's a good
I
answer
think
though.
X-ray vision. I think X-ray vision.
Here's what I'm going to tell you about that. This is why I choose magnified hearing. You can't unsee certain things. And right.
Okay.
And
I mean, you're right.
I know,
That's why I
and
asked if I could turn it
you
off.
can't unhear certain things either. But boy, I'll tell you, I don't want to have nightmares about some of the stuff that I see with X-ray vision. Great choice.
Fair enough.
That's your
Fair enough.
choice. Yeah.
Thank you. Mhm.
What is one of your hidden talents?
I am a good singer.
Yeah, I was going to ask you earlier and I didn't want to go down there. Were you good, or were you like one of those people that was like, I think I'm good, and people like, yeah, you're pretty good, but you were good.
No, I was good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
So let's not say it in the past tense. You are good. Like, I think that's one of those
Yeah.
things. If you're good,
Yeah.
you just don't lose that.
Here's the thing about vocal talent. It's a muscle. It's a muscle. And so that's why people have coaches. That's why, people are rehearsing all the time. If you're not working it, just like any other muscle, it starts to wane a little bit. And getting older, that matters as well. So I'm not as good as I once was, but
Yeah. That's a
my
Toby Keith
heyday, I
song.
did all right. I
That's a Toby Keith song right there. All right. What do you do, or where do you go for creative inspiration?
When I take some time off of the grind, I rediscover my creative capacity. And that's just a good reminder that I need to do that. And it's funny because sometimes Aaron braces himself a little bit, because when I do have, say, a week or maybe 2 weeks off around the holiday, I'm like, ooh, you know what house project we need to do?
Oh yeah.
Because suddenly I have space and capacity to be thinking creatively again. But I have recognized, and I've tried to really be disciplined in this, holding calendar space for what I call new content development. Because I get lots of ideas and inspiration, but if I don't carve out time to architect it, I'll lose it. So I would certainly encourage everyone and everybody everywhere to carve out that space for that creative space. And creativity comes in many forms.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, great question.
Yeah. Good lesson in leadership. Would you rather hear a comforting lie or an uncomfortable truth?
Uncomfortable truth. 100%.
Yeah. Some people might think ignorance is bliss, but I'm with you
Nope,
on that one.
it's not.
Yep.
It's
Get it
not.
over with. Yep.
100%.
I think I already touched on this, but whatever. I plan these in advance of our conversation, so you might be repeating yourself. So let's just drive this sucker home. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
You can't take it with you.
Yep. All right. Yep. So
Yeah.
bringing it back. All right. Question 9. Yeah, that was 8 questions, by the way. So that went so fast.
Okay.
How do you define happiness?
Acceptance of what you can and cannot control. There was a quote that I encountered during COVID, and it really resonated. And it was basically like, your ability to embrace uncertainty directly correlates with your ability to have a happy life. There's just so much that we can't control.
Yeah.
And
wow,
yeah.
You were snappy on that one. Good job. Great answer. I'll tell you something. I am a huge fan of yours. I've been a huge fan since the day I met you. I was heartbroken when you said you couldn't become a facilitator because you had to do your graduate studies. Then you came back, and now you're with the good guys. And so I'm super happy that you're on our squad and you're part of the Coalition9 community, because we're a better community having you in it. So more people need to know who you are. And one big part of this is making sure that I amplify ways that they can connect with you. So I will put some links in the show notes, depending on whatever you say. So how can people get to know who you are?
Yeah. Well, I have I'll call it a beginner website, leoraleadership.com. I created it as a result of my graduate studies. It was part of a final project. So it's definitely a work in progress, but that's one way where you can kind of track me down and get a sense of what I'm all about and what Leora is all about. And there's contact information there. And I love meeting new people and hearing stories. I think that's where it's at. So I'm here, happy to be a resource and to serve in meaningful ways. Let's leave it better than we found it.
I love it. We're going to leave it right at that. You are such a breath of fresh air, and I'm so happy that you finally said yes to being on the podcast. We found this this time. So on behalf of Sara, this has been the Power of Nine podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Eggert, and I want to thank you for the privilege of your time.